Hello, hello. Hopefully you can all see and hear me. Hi, good morning. My name's Katey Goodwin. I'm Deputy Director of Art UK, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the first session of this two-day conference celebrating sculpture and the end of our sculpture project. So a couple of things to note before I start. This session is being recorded, so if you have to leave, you can catch up with it in the future, and we'll be adding them to YouTube at a later date, and we'll let you know when those are live. It might take us a week or so to get those done. My Clear Text are providing live captioning on behalf of Stage Text, so if you want to enable the captioning, there's a button at the bottom of your screen with a CC on it that you can click to get the captioning up whilst I'm talking. So hopefully you know who we are, but if not, Art UK is a cultural education charity, and our mission is to make art in the UK's public organisations accessible to everyone. And we do this by digitising artworks, excuse me, and making them available for free on our shared digital platform, Art UK. We write engaging stories about the artworks, sharing new insights into artists and the UK's art collections. We used to be known as the Public Catalogue Foundation, so some of you will know us from the major oil paintings project we undertook from 2003 to 2012, where we catalogued all of the oil paintings in public ownership in the UK. You can see over 215,000 oil paintings on our website for over 3,000 collections, as well as an increasing number of works on paper. There's around 14,000 drawings and watercolours and over 2,000 prints on Art UK. And we've recently started adding photographs. There's a couple of hundred of those on the site. And the work of 50,000 artists is represented on Art UK. And thanks to the Art UK Sculpture Project, we now have thousands of sculptures on our website. And as we come to the end of the project, the main focus of this session is to take you through what our project achieved, how we did it and why. And over the course of the two-day conference, some of my Art UK colleagues and our project partners will also be speaking and making presentations on specific aspects of the project, including digitisation, working with our volunteer team, art detectives, sculpture discoveries, and our learning and engagement programme. I'm going to touch on all of those areas too, to give a broader overview, but my colleagues are going to go into a bit more depth over the next couple of days. Right, at this point, I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me whilst I do that. Okay, so hopefully you can now see my PowerPoint presentation. So the project itself, the delivery phase started in 2017 and it's just finishing now. So it's just under 4 years that we've been working on this project. Our major funder was the National Lottery Heritage Fund, who, as you can see, gave us the vast majority of our funding for the project. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. There we go. Slow to react to my PowerPoint this morning. But we did have quite a lot of other funders as well who provided about £1 million between them. So I'm not going to read all these out, but they're all on the screen because I wanted to make sure that everybody was represented here, and to say an enormous thank you to all of the project funders, because we couldn't have done any of the work without them. So why did we do this project? Well, we completed our 10-year project to digitise the nation's oil paintings in 2012, and we wanted to turn our attention to another art form. And after some consideration, we decided to focus on sculpture, as it seemed like an area that hadn't been fully explored. And we wanted to be able to build on the work of other projects, such as mapping sculpture and the public sculpture cataloguing undertaken by the Public Monuments and Sculpture Association. And until we started this project, however, no one had taken a comprehensive look at sculpture and collections across the UK and in our public spaces in quite the same way that we were doing as part of this project. So there's 4 objectives, as you can see here, and these were stated in our activity plan at the start of the project. So to obviously look at sculpture itself, improve access to sculpture through digitisation, and do a number of learning and engagement activities to increase participation and skills through volunteering and training, and also to help collections strengthen them by them having a better understanding of the sculpture that they own. We didn't do it on our own. It wasn't just Art UK. Art UK was the lead organisation, but we worked with a number of specialist organisations who brought their own expertise to the project. So as you can see here on the list, Public Monuments and Sculpture Association, the BBC, Royal Photographic Society, Culture Street, Factum Foundation, Royal Society of Sculptors, and Vocalise. We're going to be having presentations throughout this conference from the Royal Photographic Society, Culture Street, Royal Society of Sculptors, and Vocalise. So we'll be looking forward to those over the next couple of days. We also have a sculpture steering panel who helped to develop the project sculpture remit, and more of that remit in a minute. And we're extremely grateful for the advice and support of all the partners and the steering panel members, because again, we couldn't have done it without them. We're a small organisation, so we drew on a lot of expertise to help us throughout the project. So before I say more about what we did, I want to emphasise that the project isn't just about recording and photographing sculptures, and it might sound a bit cheesy, but it really is about people. And the project and its funding gave us the opportunity to work with thousands of people across the UK. We were able to employ 57 project staff over the course of the project in the digitisation team, in editorial, content, copyright and operations, and on our learning and engagement team. And the staff were based across the UK, from northern Scotland to the south coast of England, in Wales and in Northern Ireland. And we took our time to recruit and train the right people for the project roles. And we were very privileged to work with a dedicated and enthusiastic team. And across the UK, we had 40 professional photographers working with the digitisation team to photograph sculptures in collections. And over 500 volunteers have been helping us to research and photograph public sculpture. Other contributors have been staff and volunteers from the collections, who kindly provided access to their sculpture for photography. And many also received training from us as part of the project's professional development. And also people of all ages and backgrounds took part in sculpture-related events, learning new skills, discovering the sculpture around them, and just enjoying themselves as well. So these images you can see here are just a snapshot of the people who've been involved in person in the project, and that's well over 29,000 people. And that number doesn't include people who've engaged with the sculpture project and with the sculpture itself online. That's just people who took part in person, so nearly 30,000 people. So there's 2 main strands to the project, digitisation and learning. I'm going to talk about digitisation first. So we had to have a remit to what we were going to include in the project, and our sculpture steering panel helped to create the list of what we were and weren't going to include. Because obviously we had finite time, finite resources and finite funding. So unfortunately, we weren't able to include absolutely everything. But what we did include was the public organisations and charitable trusts we already worked with as Art UK. There are some private collections in there, an increasing number of those. They're located across the UK, but also in the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands. Sculpture can come from anywhere in the world, but we did decide to put a date limit just to be realistic on what we could achieve over 3.5 years or so. So for this project, we were looking specifically at the last 1,000 years. And that doesn't mean that we can't include earlier items later on, but for this particular project, with the funding that we had, that was what we included. So what we didn't include is listed here, and it's just, we had to obviously, as I say, ensure that the project was manageable and cost effective. And just because we didn't include some of these objects in the project, it doesn't mean that we can't include them later on, because the catalogue on Art UK is always evolving, but we had to draw the line somewhere, as I'm sure you can understand. From remit around public sculpture, we took our lead from our partners, the Public Monuments and Sculpture Association, and worked with the remit that they were already working within. So, and their definition here, landscape or urban features that are sculptural and or commemorative, or both. Again, the sculpture can come from anywhere in the world. We're not specifically looking at types of sculpture just made in the UK. They can come from anywhere. The date that they've used is mainly from the Stuart period onwards, but they do include some medieval. So again, we are sort of going back into that medieval period as well. And they had specific object types that they record, including not just things like statues and figures, but also reliefs and architectural features and some clock towers, things like that. So occasionally you'll come across something on Art UK and think, why is there a gate on here? But there is a reason why that is included, and it is a sculpture, or it's a monument of some kind. Oh, sorry, going back, I meant to mention churches. So yeah, we have included some churches which were traditionally the type of location we've worked with in the past as Art UK, apart from a few collections that we work with, such as St Paul's Cathedral. But we have explored more working with churches and including sculpture from within them within the project. So, for example, we set up a project with Churches Conservation Trust to record sculptures in their churches, when that's worked very well. So this is something we would definitely want to develop more in the future, and those church sculptures will be added to the site soon. Some of them are probably already on there. So we organised the digitisation of sculpture in collections by splitting the UK into 25 regions, each managed by a coordinator. And the coordinators were managed by 2 digitisation managers called Hazel and Alison, who'll be talking later this morning. We did our best to get everyone together in person as much as we could, with staff being dispersed right across the UK. Including this meeting you can see here in the photo, which is where we got together in Stirling at the university in 2018. And it was always good to get people together in person, as well as obviously have lots of communication virtually as well. Each coordinator worked with photographers based in their part of the country, and a team of photographers is managed by Colin and Jessie, who again are going to be talking in the next conference session. And it took a few months to, from the start of the project, to recruit and train the new staff, but we were able to start the sculpture photography in April 2018. And between that date and the last of the photography of the sculpture in collections in September 2020, our team spent 965 days photographing sculpture, working with 824 collections, producing 96,000 images of over 16,000 sculptures. So 53,000 sculptures and collections were recorded overall. We didn't have the resources to photograph every single sculpture we recorded for the project, but the numbers of images on the site have been greatly increased by borrowing and licensing images directly from the collections. The image you can see here was taken at the Esteric collection in London. That shows us the setup for photographing sculpture in a temporary studio with a grey-black background. We had a set of procedures and best practice for the photographers, which they had to follow, as we wanted the images Art UK took to be high quality images, especially as these are then passed on to the collection, and the collection gets the copyright to these images that we take, so they can use them again for their own records or publicity later on. And Jessie and Colin will be talking more about photography this morning, but I just want to show you a couple of other examples of some of the shoots we set up. So as you can see from this photo, this was a temporary setup with a table, the lights, the background, for movable objects that could be moved and then turned around. So a couple of other examples here, another one on the left of a temporary setup, this one at Waterways Museum. You can see there that they had to make do with a a space with some hay bales next to them, so we were always having to find different spaces depending on what the different organisations have got available for us to set up. And then on the right, this is from Maggie's in Aberdeen. So this is photographing a sculpture that's in situ. We're obviously not going to be taking that down from the wall to photograph it. So the photographer is moving himself, in this case, around to get some multiple shots of that. And again, on the left at Ickworth, the National Trust property in Suffolk, this is our photographer Jaron photographing The Fury of Athamas by John Flaxman. And again, you can see he's got one light. He's using some reflectors on the left to reflect the light back onto the piece, and then he's moving around the object, because obviously we're not going to be moving that in any way. We work with the objects themselves are the best way to photograph them. And sometimes our photographers obviously were outside, in this particular case in the Corbenic Poetry Path in Dunkeld in Perthshire, and again moving around the sculptures to take the photographs. And our dedicated team of coordinators had a wide brief, which was everything from liaising directly with collections in their region, receiving and checking data from the collections, and organising and attending photography sessions. So lots of tape measures and notebooks needed to measure up and take notes during those photography sessions. And our approach for the digitisation of public sculpture was slightly different to digitising sculpture in collections. We set up a very large volunteering programme, which has been managed by Anthony and Tracy, who are both speaking at the next session of this conference. And between them, they recruited and trained 500 volunteers who've researched and photographed thousands of outdoor sculptures. And they've contributed 4,700 days of their time so far, which is an amazing achievement. It's probably more than that, to be honest, but that's what we've got recorded. Many volunteers are recruited through the Royal Photographic Society, including the gentleman you can see in this photograph, Peter Randall-Page, who is in this photo photographing in a church in Lincolnshire as part of our work with Churches Conservation Trust to record some works in their churches. So we were able to go through the Royal Photographic Society to find people who might be interested in taking part in the project. And a couple of other photos of volunteers. On the left, this was in Woking, with a volunteer photographer at a training session having a go at photographing a sculpture by Sean Henry in the town. And on the right is Jane Roblin, who is one of our volunteer photographers who did a lot of work in Milton Keynes for us. So once the sculpture images and data have been prepared by the digitisation teams, there starts another part of the process involving more some different specialist staff. So the records and the images are transferred to Art UK's database and then checked again by our editorial team. And copyright holders are traced and contacted by our copyright and licensing team. And these are all very important tasks that have to be completed before the artworks can be published onto the Art UK website. And we also had to do a lot of work at the start of the project behind the scenes to develop our database and the website to be able to accommodate sculpture, because for the first time we were going to be adding multiple images, and of course there are 3 dimensions to be recorded instead of just 2 dimensions, which we had for painting. So a lot of those changes had to be made. So we started adding sculpture to the Art UK site in January 2019. And you can now see over 41,000 sculpture records online, of which over 25,000 have images. We've got more sculptures still to add. We haven't added the British museums yet, so there's quite a few thousand to add there. So we're just working on their data and their images at the moment. So I'm just going to show you a few examples of types of sculpture that we've included in the project and the way that we took the images. So where we could move an object, or we could get around it, as you've seen from some of those other setups we showed you in the earlier slides, we would take multiple images. of these sculptures, so you would be able to see all around them. We also asked our photographers if they could to take some detail shots depending on the type of the object and what they thought would be make a nice detail for that particular work. So for this one, for example, the photographer's taken a really nice close-up view with the figure in focus. I think that looks really good. And then, of course, they were also looking at the sculptures themselves and making sure if anything got a signature or mark, we took a photograph of that, because obviously that's going to be useful for people if they're doing research. And a couple of other examples here. So this particular piece from the Barber Institute of Fine Arts in Birmingham, St. Catherine of Alexandria. This is a piece from around 1520 from Germany. Once part of a much larger altarpiece. So in this particular case, being able to get those multiple shots and be able to see the back and see that this would have been probably part of a larger piece is going to be of interest to people who might be specifically researching that type of work. And again, the photographer did a couple of very nice close-ups of that, of the face and the hand, which again just breaks up how it looks on the screen on the website. Looks really good. There are lots of figurative sculptures, as you can probably imagine, that have been recorded, including lots of busts. This particular one is a bust of the bearded mare. Sadly, we don't know the name of the bearded mare, and it's also by an unknown artist. This is on painted terracotta. This is held at Plymouth museums and galleries, and I really like the close-up that the photographer's done on the face of this particular piece. I think it just looks really nice. And this is the sort of work that we might want to look at for Art Detective at a later date if we don't know who he is or who made this piece. It might be more to find out about this person. And of course, contemporary works are included as well, because we go right up to the present day with works we record. So, for example, Brown and Black Dog with Blue Collar by Philip Cox. This is in Northampton, made in 1990 from papier-mâché. And on the right, a piece by Yinka Shonibari called Earth, which is at Wolverhampton Art Gallery, made around in 2010. So I've included that because I thought the back of that was rather splendid. And again, you can see with that particular piece, they photographed it within the gallery rather than moving it somewhere else. That obviously was the easier thing to do. And other types of work as well, obviously with works coming from all over the world, and then some are in different states. This particular one is called Standing Praying Winged Figure from Folkestone, made of alabaster. Again, there might be more that people can find out about that with more work with Art Detective. And then on the right, a much older piece. This is a musician playing the pipe and tabor from the English Folk Dance and Song Society from the early 14th century. And just a couple of examples then of works taken by our volunteer photographers of public sculpture. So on the left is a work called Kiss Wall by Bruce Williams, and this is in Brighton, taken by our volunteer Lawrence Suss. And on the right is a work called Mercurial by Alexander Stoddard, and that's in Glasgow, taken by another prolific volunteer photographer called Gordon Baird. It's really good. And a couple of other examples. So on the left is Petra, the Blue Peter dog. This is in the Blue Peter Garden, which is now in Manchester, taken by Fiona Matthewson. That's in Salford. And Contrapuntal Forms by Barbara Hepworth, taken by, which is in Harlow in Essex, taken by Tracy Jenkins, who was a volunteer and is now our public sculpture officer, and again has taken many photographs down in that part of the country. So just want to say quickly something about 3D imaging. So this was actually one casualty of the pandemic and lockdown in 2020, that we weren't able to do as much 3D imaging as we planned for the project. We didn't have time or resources, obviously, to do 3D imaging for every sculpture, as our focus was on the good quality multiple 2D images. But our photography managers and one of our photographers received training from project partners, Factum Foundation in 3D imaging. And Jessie, one of our photography managers, was able to use these skills to create 3D images of a group of sculptures from the William Lamb studio in Montrose in Scotland. We'll be adding those to Art UK shortly. So these are just a couple of screenshots of work that Jessie's been doing on those. And obviously this is something we would want to do more of in the future, but we were meant to go out last year and do some 3D imaging around the country and some public sculptures, but sadly that wasn't possible. Of course, Art UK isn't just a catalogue. We're creating lots of stories around sculptures, around artists, around collections. We include features by art historians, curators, writers, researchers. So some we write ourselves and some we commission people to write, like the one we've got here, on people who have got a specialist knowledge of that particular area. There's lots of different types of articles. So there's sort of list articles where you might see 11 public sculptures to see in Brighton, things like that, or it might be about a specific part of sculpture. We also have curations on the website. So this is where you can create your own curation of different artworks. There's quite a lot of these that include sculpture. And we're starting to add trails as well, sculpture trails. There's just a couple of those on the site at the moment, but do explore the curations part of the website and do have a go yourself at creating your own curation. And we also use sculpture to as an influence for a new range that we've got on our Art UK shop. So I'm going to do a shameless plug here for the Art UK shop, and this particular range is called the Peplos Jewellery Collection, which was designed exclusively for Art UK by award-winning jewellery designer Lynn McLachlan. So this is influenced by drapery found in classical and neoclassical sculpture. So again, do have a look at the shop. There might be some things on there that might be interesting to you. So that was the most rapid trip through our digitisation ever, because I've still got to talk about learning. So alongside our digitisation programme, our learning and engagement team set up a very ambitious programme of activities and events. And we work closely with our project partners to deliver other parts of the learning programme, specifically Vocalise, Culture Street and the Royal Society of Sculptors. So there's a whole afternoon of the conference tomorrow devoted to learning and sculpture, which includes presentations from our learning team and from our partners. So I'm just going to highlight a few aspects of the programme now. And again, as you can see from the numbers, we had nearly 23,000 people take part in person across all these different strands of the learning programme over the last few years. The image on this slide is from one of the workshops run by Vocalise at Reading Museum in 2018 for blind and partially sighted people. And I've got another slide of that in a minute. So I'll tell you a bit about some of the different aspects of it. So Masterpiece in Schools. This is one of our learning strands, a programme which saw its sculpture taken into schools for a day, and they were loaned either from a local collection or directly from a member of the Royal Society of Sculptors. We first ran this as a programme in 2015 with oil paintings. That was very successful, so we had a go doing it with sculpture. It was incredibly hard work, but we'd hoped to run 75 Masterpiece in Schools days by the end of the project, but our last events in 2020 had to be cancelled when schools were closed. Some were run virtually, so we were still able to work with the schools, but in a different way. And some became resources on our website called Masterpieces at Home, or they were adapted so people could use the ideas at home during lockdown. So just a couple of examples of some of those. So this particular one was in Glasgow. This is where sculptor Kate Robinson restaged several sculptures in a school that she'd made for a performance at the Tramway in Glasgow. and she worked with higher students of art and design and drama at St Andrew and St Bride Secondary School in Glasgow. And the students explored the sculptures in the drama studio at the school, where they were staged with lighting and audio from the original production to create an immersive atmosphere. And the students heard from Kate about her involvement in the production and were encouraged to consider how drama and art can intersect. So students then produced original works on the floor of the studio, inspired by Kate's work in using prisms, light sources and coloured sand. So in this particular case, not all of the masterpieces in schools were directly attached to art and design classes. They were often other parts of the national curriculum, because obviously sculpture can be used for lots of different things, not just for studying art and design. So in this particular case, using drama as the basis, and then, as you can see, it looks like they were enjoying themselves. And then a couple of other examples of masterpieces in schools. So on the left is from one of our first loans in 2018 from Leeds Art Gallery to a local primary school, where they took a bronze portrait bust of the artist Horace Brodsky by Henry Gaudier-Bresca into the school for the day. And each class took part in a large-scale drawing workshop with the artist Nicola Pembleton. And they were able to ask the staff from the art gallery lots of questions as well. And on the right, we have an event run with Stephen Broadbent, who's a member of the Royal Society of Sculptors. That was at St Teresa's School in Chester, where he showed them how to make, did mould making, and they each got a chance to create their own plaster object from the moulds they were making out of clay. So that's the slide on the image on the right, you can see. And then the other big strand of from the learning programme was called Sculpture Around You. And these were events which were developed to work with community groups and the public. And we ran over 60 events. And like Masterpiece in Schools, the target was 75, but some had to be cancelled last year because of lockdown. And these were bespoke events. These were, again, although all 60 were different things, working with different groups across the country. So, for example, in the photograph here, we have some members of a local community photography group in Dundee who worked with the University of Dundee and an artist called David Oudney to take photographs of public sculpture across the city. And then their images were included in a project within the town called Sharing Not Hoarding, and their images are now also online. So out of that Sculpture Around You event, we also got the images that they've taken. So, for example, there's the March of Penguins on the left in Dundee, which is very popular. They get dressed up at different times of the year. They've got their own unofficial Facebook page. And then there's Desperate Dan Dog and Minnie the Minx, again in Dundee. And then a couple of other examples. So on the left, that's an image from a project we did with a group of young people from Waltham Forest Young Carers. They went to Gilwell Park, the home of the Scout Heritage Collection, and that was to give them respite and enjoyment for the young people. And they learnt new skills in animation as well. They documented and drew sculptures around Gilwell Park and then learned to animate them afterwards. And on the right is one of our activities run by project partners Vocalise, where partially sighted artist Sally Booth led a workshop for people at Reading Museum who recruited through Reading Association for the Blind. And Vocalise have done a number of workshops for us over the project, and Anna from Vocalise is talking tomorrow afternoon. We also did a lot of work with our project partners, Culture Street, who've been creating a series of short films, review films with local schools, also sculptural technique films with professional artists, and also through a competition called the 4-Minute Film Challenge, which encouraged schools and young people to make their own films about sculpture. And Keith from Culture Street, again, he's talking at the conference tomorrow afternoon, so he'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that. But just a couple of examples of those. In this particular photo, that was when we worked at Dulwich House Museum in London with a local school group. And these are from some of the sculpture practice films that Culture Street have made. So Halima Cassell, the artist who carves clay, that was in her studio, and stone carver Dawn Rowland is in the photo on the right, and that's Keith making the film of her and how she works. A couple of photos from when they made the review films with the schools, so filming at Harlow Art Trust, with a Henry Moore sculpture, a family group in that collection. And then on the right, that's when they were filming at Merton College, Oxford, and they were talking about a sculpture that's in the chapel at the college. So with the in-person sculpture learning programme now ended, there are still ways for teachers to use Art UK for lesson planning and inspiration. And there's a new area of our website with an increasing number of useful resources linked to the national curriculum, including the sculpture films made by Culture Street and the audio descriptions that Vocalise have made being added as well. They'll be of interest to people of all ages, so do explore that area of the site. So just some examples there of some of the lesson plans that are available at the moment. And then on top of all of this, the digitisation and the learning, we also provided a series of training and professional development opportunities during the project. This including training sessions for staff and volunteers from the organisations that took part in the project. And they had practical training in digitisation and looking after sculpture in their collections. We had some photography students shadow professional photographers to learn more about how they work. And we had museum professionals from Greece come over to learn about masterpiece in schools and take what they'd learned back to Greece. And they're developing their own versions of the programme there. So just to show you a couple of images of that. So on the left, that's from our digitisation training sessions run by Jessie and Colin, our photography managers. That one at the Harris Museum in Preston. That was the first one they did. And then on the right, that was at Maidstone Museum, where our trainer, Claire Mitchell, was running a training session on caring for sculpture. And some images taken by the photography students when they were shadowing our photographers, so they were able to learn how the photographers set up the different shoots, where they put their lights, their reflectors, and how they did it in a variety of different settings. And this is our Greek Knowledge Exchange members who came over to the UK in 2 groups. So they did different sessions. They went to Masterpiece in schools. They also did some seminars, and we also took them out on some trips as well. So as you can see here, they got a chance to go around the Sculpture in the City exhibition in London and enjoyed themselves there. So what happens now the project's ended? Well, of course, it doesn't actually end. We continue to add sculptures to Art UK, as well as manage and update the existing records and images. We continue to write stories about the artworks and create new resources for our learning pages. And our art detectives continue to research the sculptures and discover new information. Our public sculpture recording was curtailed by COVID-19, so we still have a few months of work to do there. We're already planning how the data can be interrogated to facilitate future research, such as drawing conclusions on the range of sculptures around us across the UK. So as we reach the end of the project and of my presentation, I want to say thank you to lots of people. We're very grateful to the project partners, funders, and the sculpture steering panel for all their help with setting up and running the project. We also couldn't have got to this point without the support of the UK's public organisations that have given us access to their sculptures and contributed to our learning programme. Thanks to all the artists who've taken part in engagement activities. And last but definitely not least, we're indebted to our project staff, photographers and volunteers who diligently worked away in many parts of the country and who made this project such a success. And there's going to be lots more fascinating presentations still to come in the conference, so please do join us for those. Right, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, now I haven't got a chair, so I'm going to have to do this myself. We've probably got a few minutes for some questions, so bear with me. I've got the Q&A and I'm just going to see. Yep. Is Art UK still adding sculptures to the project? Yes, we are. Yes, as I've just said, we've still got some more to add. So although there's 41,000 there at the moment, there will still be more to come. Yeah, very recent public sculptures were also included, yes, installed in 2020. Obviously, if they've just been installed outside, we've done our best to catch up. We are adding things as they're installed or soon after. Bear with me. Lots of questions. Does the search function include names? I assume that means if you put the name in of either an artist or a sitter, then yes. If that's known and that's recorded, then yes, that would come up. Can collections who weren't involved in the initial project get involved now? I would say get in touch if you're from a collection. Obviously, we went back to every single collection that we'd worked with on your paintings. And some of them, most of them were able to get involved. Some of them didn't have any sculptures, they weren't involved in the sculpture project. So I would say if you are from a, just get in touch, send us an email. I'm just going to answer a couple more. There's quite a few. I'm just going to see which ones there are. So that's quite a few asking. How do I set up having work in school once COVID is over? Well, sadly, the sort of more formal part where we're taking sculptures into schools has ended. But again, do get in touch and we can talk about if there's anything specific you wanted to do. Have you worked across cities like Brighton? Yes, we have. We have worked across Brighton and lots of other cities, so you'll be able to find those on the site. Right, I'm just going to do one more. Learning resources look incredible, and as I understand it, thank you very much. As I understand it, learning resources from partner collections are being added to the learning pages too. Would Art UK like to hear from partner collections who would like to share their learning resources? Yes, again, do get in touch. It was not that long since the learning pages were launched, so it's quite early days. So there's more being added all the time. That is an ambition that we want to add the information from and links from other collections. Okay, I'm going to stop talking because I've talked for only a couple of minutes longer than I said I was going to. So it's been fantastic to talk to you first thing. And again, I just want to say a big welcome to the conference. And I hope that you can join us for the other sessions. But as I say, they are being recorded. So we'll let you know when those recordings are available. So if you aren't able to attend certain sessions that you really want to attend, then you can catch up with them later on. But so the time is now, it's about 10:15, and our next session starts in half an hour, 10:45. So that's when our digitisation team are going to be talking about how they tackle doing that in a lot more detail. So grab yourselves a snack, put the kettle on, and we'll see you in about half an hour. Thanks very much. Bye.